Everyone has a story. Everyone has a journey. Your path matters. The journey is for real conversations. No matter what life throws at you, your experience can inspire. Have you overcome something that changed you? Found purpose in unexpected places? Want to reflect on the twists and turns that shaped you? Join the Journey podcast and celebrate transformation. DM to be a guest or tag someone whose journey deserves to be heard.
Welcome to the journey, and today's journey involves a ghostwriter who 11 years ago worked for Trader Joe's as their director of computer operations. Our guest decided it was time to strike out on their own, quit, had a huge birthday party with over 100,000 friends, and they are also a photographer and moved to Florida. Now, our guest is a premium ghostwriter and likes to help people by writing a book that delivers their message to their audience. And usually they do their guests that get down to their art and soul and then write their story around that. So the challenges associated with this change of life were dramatic. They had to fight preconceived ideas, procrastination, and had to learn how to market, which was not easy for an introvert. I welcome Richard Lowe to the journey.
Well, thank you for inviting me to the show. I'm happy to be here.
You're welcome. Now, journeys begin, and obviously when you're younger, that's usually the brain struck moment. But what was the earliest memory that struck you?
To be a writer?
Yes.
When I was 17 years old, my grandfather we had a Christmas day, for family. And my grandfather was always avoided. He was kind of cranky, you know, um, not pleasant to be around. Well, I decided to, because I was 17 and, was curmudgeon-y. I decided to talk to my grandfather. Everybody said, no, don't talk to him, leave him alone. He doesn't want to, blah, blah, blah. So I talked to him, and I found out he was a hero in World War II. He was on the Yangtze River Patrol um, when that was in 1938. Then when that was disbanded, he moved to the Philippines, and he was on Corregidor. And then when it fell and the Japanese captured it, he was captured, was in the Bataan Death March, and spent 4 years in a Japanese prisoner of war camp. So it's like, you know what? He's earned the right to be whatever he wants to be. That's what I thought. But I learned that I like people's stories. I love stories. That's when I learned that. I wrote a little book, never lost its sense, but wrote a little book. Um, and I didn't go into writing right away, but that was always the seed in the back of my mind was his stories, his everything about him.
Yeah, and you talk about people like your grandfather, who have been in the war. Those are the stories that are key, I believe, to unlocking a lot of potential in writers. Because if you know someone in your family or even a close friend who was in the war, even though they are quiet and you get told don't talk to them about certain topics, they would want to talk about it.
Yeah.
It's a way of release.
Well, sometimes it takes a little work to get them to talk.
Mm.
But, here I was this hyperactive, angry, arrogant 17-year-old, sat down next to him and said, "Tell me your story." And he did. And he even didn't hold back. Some of it was shocking. And then after that, when I was in my roughly the same age, I worked in a liquor store. I was probably a couple of years. I think I was 17 also when I worked in a liquor store. I had a boss who was a World War II German Nazi U-boat commander. That's submarine, for those of you who don't know what a U-boat is. He used to sink American ships, and he was my boss. And he told me a lot of stories.
Mm.
And um, crying his eyes out sometimes, and I'm, 17, like, okay, how do I deal with this? I'm not the adult in the room. And
Yeah,
I learned a lot of stories, and I learned I like stories. Didn't write a book for him, but it was interesting.
yeah. So as you grew stronger in understanding things and you started writing a lot more, did you feel freely able to adapt to what you was writing or reading to adapt to your style? Because obviously ghostwriting as a whole adds another dimension to it because you get the idea, but then you write it as if you writing it yourself, or do you write it as if it's that person?
Well, first of all, there was a 34-year gap between that and when I started writing, on
Mm,
my own. Um, yeah, right. Ghostwriting is hard. It's a lot harder than you think to do it right. I mean, to do it wrong, you can use AI or you can kind of just write something. To do it right, you have to interview a person at length, get their heart, and then somehow put that heart into the book. Um, and hopefully you don't get too much blood on you,
mm,
because sometimes it can hurt. I've interviewed some people who it was very painful for them, and hence for me. I have to caution them sometimes I'm not their therapist. Uh, but it's all it's all interesting. But that's the hard part is getting the story from them, not from me. So,
yeah. And you say about the pain, it is painful because you have to go into the depth and, like you said, the art of the feel. Now, I've written through poetry books. I've even been taught by a poet how to be a certain way in poetry. And I know from writing books, it's very similar, except for you're not rhyming and you're not, shorthand in it because poetry is shorthand of a book. But if you write a book that is exploring your life, it is per se like a book because it turns into a book.
mhm,
But it's just reading the words and reading the passion in the writing.
indeed. The writing has to be passionate. It has to get the reader in. Anybody can write a boring book. AI can write a boring book, but you want to grab the reader by the throat, and just yank him into the book, and then he's not physically, and then he or she is in the book, and they won't put it down. Everybody's had a book where they started it, an audio book or a regular book where they just couldn't put it down, and you do a binge read. For me, it was Lord of the Rings,
Yeah,
my first one, and there's some other ones from that era. For other people, it's other books, Harry Potter. Yeah, there's a books, Game of Thrones. Those are books that are very, very hard to put down once you start.
yeah.
So be warned, if you start them, you're going to have a long weekend.
I remember reading The Hobbit when I was younger, when I was about, and I was young when I read it. I was 9 years old, and I thought it's going to be a small, condensed story that you could follow. But obviously, because you see how big the Hobbit book is,
Hmm.
it's a very intense read. And I think it took me like a month to read. And I'm usually a quick reader, but it took
Hmm.
me a whole month to read the whole book. It's like, wow.
Yeah, I've been in situations like that. And then there's books. Lord of the Rings was a tough read. I was only like 14 when I started reading it. And the first 50 pages of Lord of the Rings, 50 to 100 pages, are like boring as boring can be. Party and all the stuff about hobbits and more hobbits and more and then it's like starts to speed up, get more interesting, and then it speeds up, and then wow, strap on your seatbelt.
Yeah,
But it's not a drama. It's
no.
not like the movie. The movie's a drama, and I don't know why they made those choices, but um, the book is not a drama, so it's not a fast book.
And the same goes with the Harry Potter series. You start off slow,
Hmm.
and J.K. Rowling did an excellent job in producing the books that built and built. It started off not saying easy because all books are never easy if you can't follow storyline, but it started off tame where it was, like you was following a teenage book. By the time you was reading the last book, it was a young adult book, which was twice as big as the original book.
Right, right. Yeah, that's following the 3 act or 6 act or five act or however many acts. the first act is always set up. So it tends to be a little slower. In modern books and movie making, they've put a little preamble on there. Sometimes there's nothing to do with anything, especially in movies, where there's some action. You see
Mm.
that in movies where there's a big fight. Has nothing to do with anything. The fight's never mentioned in the book again or in the movie,
Yeah,
but it gets you into the book.
yeah. It's like a hook, as I call it, hooks you into the.
It's a hook. Yeah. And you got to have a hook because what does a person do when he buys a book or watches a movie? It's the first 30 seconds, maybe 60 seconds. And if you don't grab his attention, his or her attention, you're screwed. You're not going to read it.
Yeah, and then it just collects dust and no one will, yeah, like you said, read it.
Yeah, you'll have a great coffee table book for yourself and your parents and maybe some friends, but that's about it.
Yeah. So going into the present, how do you find yourself nowadays from where you were when you first started? Do you feel like you're in a better place of understanding things now?
Well, I've had 53 clients, everybody from people who made $30 million from the book that I wrote to people who get speaking engagements, get on TED Talks. I've done a dummies book, but my name is not on it, unfortunately, but I wrote it, ghost wrote it for somebody else. So I've got confidence now is what I got. You want me to write a book? I can write a book and I'll write a darn good book
Yeah.
because you don't write books of that caliber when they're junky.
Yeah, true. And you do develop stronger and stronger. Like I said, when you do start off, you are, and your words, junky, you are junky. But then as you build and build and you get more confidence, it gets stronger.
Well, it's mostly the confidence. I mean, writing skills, of course, and people skills and all kinds of other skills are needed. But confidence is in any job or anything in life, confidence is what will make or break you. If you don't have confidence, if you won't get out there and just talk to somebody, I mean, I'm talking to people who have $100 million in their pocket, and that's intimidating. I don't have $100 million in my pocket. We wouldn't
Well,
be having this podcast if I did,
exactly. Same here. But
but they do, and wow, it's quite a different league.
yeah, and it's like pocket change for them.
Well, they're just as they're even more strict with money than you would think. Maybe
Yeah.
that's how they became rich. Um, but they're not so worried about the money. They're worried about having quality.
So, is there any works that you're able to share that you would want listeners, viewers to read to see your work?
I have one book I'm especially fond of called Gators in the Soup. It's on Amazon, and I was approached by a lady named Doris, um, dear old lady. I think she was in her 70s, late 70s, and she'd recorded her dreams and handwritten notes for her whole life. And she handed me this pile of paper. You can imagine, piles of paper, and said, "I want you to read this." Like, yeah, I'm going to read several thousand pages of handwritten notes that you wrote when you woke up. But I read as many as I could and create a novel out of it. And I created a novel, and it's the story of two magical gators that wander around a magical land, which when you get about halfway through the book, it's pretty obvious it's Florida, and and have magical battles and magical beings and stuff. She loved it. She really loved it, and she told me when it was done that holding the finished book in her hand was almost as good as holding her firstborn for the first time. And that I don't cry, but that made tears in my eyes, and it's quite a powerful statement. Um, and I'm kind of proud of that. And she COVID got her a couple months later. I think it was COVID, but she achieved a dream that she'd had her whole life, so it was good.
And the dream was achieved, which is amazing to hear.
Uh,
Now, people might want to get in contact. Can they get in contact with you? If so, how?
the writingking.com is the easiest way. Just go to thewritingking.com. And they'll find all kinds of resources, and there's all places in there to set an appointment or contact me and just do it.
Okay, and the last question, because I like how this is so condensed and it's so impactful when it is a condensed interview. People would want to be inspired by hearing words of inspiration wherever they are going on their journey. What would you say to, up and coming ghostwriters or even anyone in general? What would you say to them to help inspire them?
Well, a friend of mine was down in the dumps several years ago, and she was worried about what she was going to do with her life, and she wanted to be a writer, but she didn't know how good it was. So I said, "Well, your person you love as a writer is Mercedes Lackey." So and we were doing a little. I was hosting a podcast then, and I said, "Go ask Mercedes Lackey to be on our podcast, and you can interview her." She said, "No, she'd never talk to me." Mercedes Lackey was delighted to talk to her, and they talked for hours. And at the end, her name was Bonnie, and she asked, "So what do I do?" And Mercedes Lackey looked her in the eye and said, "Get your butt in a seat and write every day. Just write.
Yeah,
Do that, and you'll be fine."
I love those words, and it's just, I will support that wholeheartedly. If you got a moment a day, just write something down, even if it's on a piece of paper, even if it's on a journal app on your phone or tablet. You can create something from writing something once a day, I believe.
Yeah, just do it.
And on that, I like to say, Richard, thank you for sharing your journey. It has been, like I said, short, but this short podcast is the short podcast that, in my opinion, will impact a lot of people because
Good.
you don't have to go into long details. You don't, because I know for a fact, and it's me rambling on in a way, but if you do a long podcast, people are going to be like, why am I listening to this? Turn it off.
Of course, of course.
But this has just been the short, impactful message that I believe people will enjoy.
Perfect. Thank you very much for having me on.
Hi, my name is Amy Harrison. I just published another book, and this is the first hard copy I've released. Let's claw right into a sneak peek. Hi, I'm my Galaxy Brat. Error. It is becoming clearer. Y'all probably think I'm annoying. Turns out they all just plain boring. I'm just being me, the realest version. Sweet on the inside, tell like it is on the outside. Yes, I embrace love, never hate. But honesty flies in my mouth like a dove. Be careful before it's too late. If you want to read more, visit the link in the description. Meow at you later.
Parsons. The narrator is Kate Barton. Director and producer, Darren Street. Tim Parsons would like to thank family and friends for their support with the paramedic Chris venture. The series is dedicated to the memory of his father, Reverend David Parsons. Copyright Tim Parsons 2020, all rights reserved. Unauthorized use, copying or sharing of this audiobook is strictly prohibited. This has been a Voice Reel studio production for Tim Parsons.
Oh, good afternoon, everyone. I've just been listening to the Paramedic Chris children's books on audio again, and I just love it because they've given a tribute in one of them to my dad as well, who passed away a few years ago. I love audio books, and it's great to walk around, and it's great to sit at the computer, if you're out jogging or wherever, to listen to them as well. All 4 of the Paramedic Chris children's books are available on audio book from Amazon. Go and take a listen to them. You won't be disappointed. You'll hear what happens when a community pulls together and supports one another. The best thing is to pop over to my website, paramedicchriskidsbooks.org, and you'll see the links on the shop page. Keep safe, everyone, and thank you for being you.
The Journey podcast explores stories of personal growth, challenges, and life-changing moments. Each episode dives into unique experiences, offering insights and inspiration for listeners navigating their own paths. I believe everyone has a story worth sharing. If you'd like to share your journey with David and others, email your story to wisewords1983@reborn.com, and it may be featured in a future episode.